I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show, and today on Blockchain Interviews with Rebecca Liao, co-founder and CEO of Saga. Rebecca, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashton. It's great to be here.
You're very welcome. I know you and your team have been busy with the mainnet launch. It's been a crazy month of April, and I'm excited to dive into everything that Saga has been working on. I would love to start off our conversation for those who aren't familiar with Saga. Can you talk a little bit about what you and your team have built, and then we can dive into all the details?
Absolutely. Well, it's wonderful to be with you. And Saga is a layer one to launch layer ones. So what that means is any developer who is building on us, they are by definition on their own chain or set of chains, which we call chainlets. And you can have as many of these as you like because they all come with interoperability out of the box. So they all speak to one another. So you can have multiple layer ones supporting your application. As you can probably tell with this kind of design, it is built for scale and performance. We are also costless on the front end, and therefore we are trying to remove as much friction from the user experience as possible. We are currently focused on gaming and entertainment. Those are the kinds of applications that most badly need this kind of infrastructure. There are about 360 projects that are building on Saga at the moment. They all sit in our Saga Innovator program, which is our ecosystem program. 80% of that is gaming. About 10% is more pure NFT, like art, music, general entertainment, and then the remaining 10% is in DeFi. So we are a general purpose layer one, but heavy focus on gaming.
Wow, very cool, and I'd love to dive into that gaming discussion a little later. I'm curious on this layer one for layer ones. You know, there's been a lot of discussion around layer twos on Ethereum, which is a whole nother story. But there's also, I feel like the last 12 months has been a lot of different layer ones, and not all of them are compatible with each other. And it's a lot to understand, you know, all these different blockchains. You know, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens. But having it compatible, of course, is going to help. What do you think about the amount of layer ones coming out? Is this a little different because everything communicates and lowers those barriers to entry of cross communication, cross blockchain? Is there a limit to how many layer ones that we need?
Well, so many questions in there, Ashton. Let me address the most important one first, which is how we are different. So we are a layer one to launch other layer ones. So there's no such thing as building on Saga mainnet, actually. The mainnet exists to coordinate this entire system. So every time a developer is deploying on Saga, we are replicating ourselves. So we are taking our mainnet and then making a copy of the validator set as well as the security model. So it is a form of restaking, but it is native to Saga. So in that way, we're already pretty distinguished from any other architecture out there. Now, what makes us great partners with other layer ones, that's why you're seeing partnerships with people like Polygon, Avalanche, Celestia, even though they're not a layer one, but they do have a concept of decentralized rollups, is that we do not charge gas to the end user. So the Saga token does exist, but it is only used by developers to pay the validators to keep their chainlets alive. On the front end, we allow the developer to have whatever kind of monetization they like. So they can have their own token. And that is particularly helpful to work with other layer ones because they want value accrual on their tokens. So they remain the gas token for whatever applications they need to have scaled, and they're just sharding those applications onto Saga. So we are a great partner for those other layer ones. So we don't view ourselves as competitive per se. I think with layer twos, the difficulty can be that you are probably over modularizing the stack because you are adding a layer of complexity in the blockchain that a lot of applications frankly don't want to deal with, and the benefits don't necessarily outweigh the costs. So for a layer two, you still need settlement onto that layer one. That means that you still have to deal with high and variable gas fees. It also means that you have to deal with any sort of bridging mechanism, which depending on your layer two can be anywhere from a week to even longer than that. And at Saga, you just don't have to deal with it. So we have fast bridging because we have fast finality on all of our chains. Every chainlet is a fully decentralized proof of stake chain. As soon as the transaction settles on our chainlet, it is final. The bridges open up immediately, and then we can bridge out to any other ecosystem, including Ethereum. And again, we are costless on the front end, and therefore you do not have to deal with those high and variable gas fees. So I would say that we are all attacking the same problem. of scaling. But at Saga, we have opted to attack this problem through infinite horizontal scaling. So the way that you scale a layer one is by adding more layer ones.
Very cool. And with that scalability, when you look at Ethereum, for example, somebody creates a token on Ethereum, there's a lot of limitations. And then say the Ethereum chain goes down, the tokens, the project is sort of screwed. Does that happen with Saga? Like, are those projects relying on the Saga mainnet once their own mainnet has been launched?
So I would say that the Saga token is used to secure the entire system, which is why staking is so important to our protocol. So you probably see a lot of emphasis on staking across all of our socials and our messaging. That is because we are a fully decentralized proof of stake chain ourselves, and every single chainlet that is stood up is also a fully decentralized proof of stake chain. So staking is incredibly important. Having said that, though, it's not that hard to secure enough staking to secure the system. And after you take care of that concern, then there really is no more reliance on Saga. So every single chainlet is a layer one in its own right. So it has all the major components of a blockchain: the settlement, the consensus, the execution environment, and of course, data availability. But it does not need to have its own token for staking purposes. Now, one important thing to highlight there with respect to chainlets is I mentioned before that developers have to pay the validators to keep their chainlets alive. So they do that using Saga tokens. It is in a wallet that is controlled directly by that developer. Now, in the event that the developer, for whatever reason, is running out of funds, they can no longer afford the fee, which shouldn't happen. It's about $500 per month per chainlet. But let's just say that they either can't afford it or they maybe don't want to do this project anymore and they want to move on to something else. The wallet can be crowdfunded. So people can contribute Saga tokens to that wallet in order to keep that chainlet alive. That is a feature that is already live. It is, thank God, not being used yet, but it can be called upon by the developers. So again, we have tried our absolute best to replicate a full layer one experience, but of course, automate all of it.
That's great to know. And you mentioned there are over 360 different applications that are already launched, and the mainnet just launched just recently, which we can talk about. But you mentioned that a lot of it is related to gaming and entertainment. I find that fascinating. I feel like a lot needs to be done on the gaming side. I know a lot of different projects, they start out in sort of finance or DeFi, DEXs and things like that. But I know that eventually gaming is going to explode. What do you see in the potential for the gaming sector combining with Web3?
Well, we have decided to focus on it, and therefore we have full conviction in Web3 gaming, not just in terms of its ability to grow as an industry in its own right, but also in its ability to bring on new users into crypto. So it's absolutely true that a lot of people start off in DeFi. And what was so fascinating about our launch is that even though no one on the Saga core team really focuses on DeFi as our go-to-market, so we do not devote any sort of BD to DeFi. Having said that, it was great that people remember we are a general purpose layer one. And therefore, the DeFi applications really started to flood in after we went live. So DEXs are being stood up, yield products are being stood up. Obviously, the platforms out there that deal with perps or any sort of like third-party DeFi that can just plug into the protocol, those have been incredibly active, which is great. And I think what everyone looks forward to is the fact that it's very likely every single chainlet is going to have its own token and NFTs. And so the concept of GameFi is really coming to life. Having said all that, the reason why we've been focused on gaming in particular is we do think that DeFi, even at its height, is going to have limited usage. Now, you don't need necessarily a vast number of users if each of those transaction values are relatively high. So it's not a knock at all that DeFi is going to end up being a very niche technology product, not at all. I think it can start to be the lifeblood of many of our financial transactions in mainstream. Having said that, for gaming and entertainment, this reaches broader cultural zeitgeist. And with the growth in wider gaming in general, how it is penetrating culture, creativity, younger generations, particularly millennial, Gen Z, and Alpha, we felt that this was the best way in which people can come into crypto. From a technology perspective, historically, it's been the case that if you build something for gaming, that is the hardest use case because it has the highest performance requirements, the highest UI UX requirements. So if you build it for gaming, it works for everything else. I think that's been true for NVIDIA GeForce, really opening the door for them to have the best chips on the market. It's been true for Slack, starting off as a gaming communications platform and now the enterprise communications platform of record. And I hope that we can follow in that pattern.
And with gaming as a, sort of a subcategory in blockchain, there's so many variables on how the things that need to be done to integrate it more into blockchain and have a seamless experience so that the blockchain is sort of in the back. One of the main things I think about is if there's a big game and they start it off, it usually takes a few years to build a game. It's not something that can be done in like 3 months. And there's been a discussion around, gaming is going to be so hot in blockchain, but it's been a few years, and anybody who wants to build an amazing game, it takes a while. Besides that variable, where do you think we're at with the integration of all the billion-plus gamers around the world getting into blockchain eventually?
Well, you're absolutely right that the time barrier has been not just something that has stopped games from going to market and becoming popular within wider gaming, but it's also been a huge consideration for game developers and frankly, something that they've had to learn to adjust to. So you're absolutely right that a great game does take a long time. You can build a hyper casual game. There are templates out there for that within about a 3 to 6 month time frame. But in terms of a game that has legs, has earning power, has the ability to really be a platform over a long period of time, that will take several years. Now, in traditional gaming, that's okay because the convention is a studio will announce that this game is coming out. There's a really fancy trailer. The fan base really gets excited, and then they just go away for a few years while they develop the game. And it's only until they get to, say, early access or closed alpha, open alpha, alpha stages that they start to involve the creators and the influencers and start to open up the game to the media so that they can create game awareness. And from there, the go-to-market really kicks in. But it's a multi-year cycle. Now, for those of us in crypto, we know that multi-year means at least 1, if not 2 crypto cycles. And so timing the release of your game is incredibly important and incredibly hard to get right. So I think a lot of games felt pressure early on, especially the ones that were being developed in 2020, 2021, to just get something out there because the market is hot and you want to release something to your community. Unfortunately, what that often means is that the game is not quite ready. So I think what development teams have been figuring out over the last 2 years is what can we get into the hands of the community early on that's not just an NFT collection or a really hokey playable version of the game, such that they get excited, they get engaged, we really do build that community in a meaningful way. And then that buys us time to actually have the real title out there. So the development cycle is a huge variable. But I also think it's just taken time for people to understand what is a Web3 game exactly. So saying that you're going to take a Web2 game and make it Web3 by just adding NFTs and a token, that's like saying you're going to make Halo a mobile game by making the frames smaller. It is a different art form. And so I think that it's taken time for these devs to understand, okay, if it is the case that I have such a powerful decentralized economy that I'm welcoming in user-generated content, UGC, in a very scalable way, then how does my game look different? What do I put in there to allow people to modify it very easily, to participate as a gamer, as a community member? And the games that we're seeing coming out now, particularly in the genres of MMORPG, ARPGs, open worlds, et cetera, they have started to really figure it out. And that is the most exciting part because I think, honestly, it's not just Web3 that's after that. A lot of the gaming studios, they see the success of Roblox and Fortnite. They're trying to replicate it. This is what it's going to get them to that.
No, it's very exciting, Rebecca. And there's a few games that I have eagerly waiting to come out that are those open world RPG kind of games that are ones that are, they look so amazing that you expect it to take a few years.
Absolutely.
But you also mentioned there about the hyper casual games or the mobile games for casual players. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm sure that the market is just as big for audiences that just want to open their phone and play for 20 minutes. And maybe there's not as many games that I could list off that are like the Call of Duties, the hardcore development games, but there's a huge role for those as well. And I feel like blockchain can add advantages in those. What do you think about the casual games versus the hardcore games in blockchain, and are we going to see one of them first? Do they both deserve the same level of recognition with the blockchain integration?
Well, I definitely think that any great game out there that is fun, so it has a great game loop and a great game experience, deserves to have the spotlight in wider gaming in general, but definitely in crypto. So I would argue that most of the games that have been released in Web3 gaming so far are those hyper casual games. Now, the thing is, you can't have a hyper casual game carry the entire load for blockchain adoption, because I would say that what it's really good for is forming community. So if you have a hyper casual game, there's already probably the social aspect to it. And this is something that Facebook definitely, but also TikTok, they have introduced this heavy social aspect to a lot of these casual games. And managing that game through a DAO, or having some sort of in-game currency in the form of a token, to really cement your status within that community, how much you've engaged, how much of a leader you are within that social board, et cetera. Those are all really great crypto applications for hyper casual games. I think where some of these games maybe went wrong is they looked at the money in NFTs and they said, okay, I'm going to try to get in-game assets in hyper casual games on chain and then sell them as NFTs. I hate to break it to you, but there are only so many runaway hits with these collections of in-game assets. And honestly, like you said, for users whose behavior is they just open the game for 5 minutes of the day, they're standing in line, waiting for something, or they have like 5 minutes to kill between meetings or whatnot. They're not really looking to protect their in-game assets in the same way as if you worked for years to get that special gun in Counter-Strike. So it's just different user dynamics. But definitely, I do think that crypto has a huge role to play there. I think for those hardcore games that you're talking about, so I would not aspire to be a Call of Duty if I were a Web3 studio, because Call of Duty has taken years and years, hundreds of millions, if not billions, in investment in order to make that not just a great game, but a great franchise. So in crypto, I think you start with something that really shines a light on the technology, really shows it off, and then you start to think about production value. So I mean, you can't be all technology functions to a game. And Call of Duty, the reason why it's a great title is not just the game loop and the gameplay, but also the artwork, the production value. You feel immersed in this movie experience, and that's not blockchain. That is integration of a lot of other technologies that take years and years. So I wouldn't necessarily concentrate on that AAA title. I know what you're referring to, Ashton, where a lot of people are wondering, what is that AAA title in crypto that is really going to take us to the promised land? I don't think it's going to be a AAA title. I think it's going to be probably a mid-core game.
That's interesting. And yeah, I feel like it could be something as simple as, something with memes, which are very hot right now. Some casual meme thing that just all of a sudden explodes, and the gamification is right on it, and we'll see how that plays out. With the existing games, like the AAA game studios in Web2 that are already making millions and millions of dollars of revenue, I think most of them are skeptical to change up what they already have. You don't want to ruin what they have, but they definitely have their eyes, in their peripherals. They're like, okay, Web3 is there. Do you think that they're waiting for that casual game that breaks through and more social acceptance, a wider understanding of what blockchain is, and then they're going to catch up after that? How do you think that the traditional gaming studios will eventually get into gaming?
They will be followers. They will be followers. And this is just how technology adoption has gone, is that the big studios that are potentially going to be disrupted by this technology, they're not going to be the first ones to embrace it. That's like asking TradFi to go hard into crypto 5 years ago. It just wasn't going to happen. So you need the grassroots to really figure out what it is they want to see in the market. So I think Web3 gaming exists because gamers and game developers were not fully satisfied with how wider gaming has grown, the direction that it's going in. And so they wanted new technology to enable, honestly, a very powerful form of creative expression and social connection. And for the big studios, they would love to be able to capture some of that magic. So I don't know a big studio out there that's not looking to replicate Fortnite, that's not looking to replicate Roblox, because for those of you who have played, these don't have the same production value as something like a Call of Duty or a Halo, but nevertheless, hugely addictive, especially among millennials, Gen Z, alphas, and younger. And that trend is going to continue. But part of the reason why Saga has gone so hard in this direction is we know that those big studios are not going to be able to let go of the centralized generation of their intellectual property. Once you have sunk millions of dollars of investment, hundreds of millions of dollars in many cases, you want to hang on to that IP as much as you can. And you appreciate the gamer base, you appreciate the fan base, you appreciate all the modding, the customization of skins and avatars, because to you, that signals engagement. Honestly, a lot of creators come up with some really amazing work that makes it back into the canon. But having said that, I do think that they are giving up a huge revenue opportunity by not allowing for direct monetization of this decentralized generation of content. I don't think that they will capture that revenue opportunity because, like you said, it is too great a change from how they currently do business. So innovation comes from the grassroots. We need our own version of Netflix, in other words. Once that becomes very successful, then all the studios will follow and sink a lot of money into investments. But at the end of the day, I think the heart and soul of what is the Web3 game is going to come from the community.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how it's going to play out with traditional studios and what kind of games we will see become viral in the Web3 gaming space. I want to jump back to the present day. I know that Saga just launched their mainnet, and all of these gaming platforms are able to make their own blockchains, their own tokens. Can you just talk about this month, April, you launched the mainnet. What exactly does that mean for the games that are launched on Saga?
Absolutely. So what it means is that now the games have a production environment in which to deploy. And everything that the games had built so far on our test nets, that needs to be redeployed onto mainnet, properly tested, and then the games can go live. But the first crop of chainlets is already doing that. So I think we have about 85, 90 right now. Projects that are ready to go live imminently. So they're already on chainlets and they are going through the testing process on the way to going live. So at that point, any on-chain transaction that these games have baked into their gameplay, that is all going to be visible on an open ledger. And then we're off to the races. But the network is live for games to use.
Very cool. And is there an ecosystem directory, or how do we find out? Is Saga used in the back end, or are they promoting, hey, here's the Saga technology, which is great, and it's on these games? How can we start testing the games and seeing which ones come out?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the information is public. Our innovator program is organized into cohorts, and each cohort is a quarter long. So at the end of March, I believe that was the last time that we updated the innovator roster. It is available on our website. So if you go to saga.xyz, I think the first menu option should be our list of innovators. So you can take a look through that. You'll find out very quickly that it's not just all games. So there's definitely gaming infrastructure in there. As I mentioned, there are more pure NFT entertainment projects and, of course, DeFi, but the vast majority are games. So have a look through that roster, and we are going to have more of a catalog view soon of the games that are available on Saga. So it's easy for you to find the titles and then play them right away. But that is currently how you can locate our innovators.
Great. I'm excited to check it out. And I can leave a link in the notes for the viewers as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Now, with the mainnet launched and all of these projects moving on to the main net so that they can actually have the production environment,
Yeah.
what comes next for Saga? Just helping bring more platforms and just expanding the amount of, to thousands of applications. What else is in the works for you and your team?
That takes a lot of work for sure. So I think that that's where most of our focus will be. But I think one of the things that we've really made a name for ourselves for is go-to-market and user acquisition. And so a few days after mainnet launch, we announced our power level over 9,000 campaign. And for those of you who watch Dragon Ball Z as kids, you probably recognize this right away. Like, what is the power level? It's over 9,000. That's the joke. But the idea of it is we are giving our closest partners the ability to seed early user acquisition by airdropping to our stakers. So over 100 tokens and NFTs are going to be airdropped to our stakers over the course of the next few months. Wow. And these are not just brand new tokens from chainlets that are freshly launched, but they are also existing tokens for games, let's say, that are going multi-chain and they are opening up an instance on Saga. So they will have a token that's already recognizable to their communities. But we are also pulling in marquee titles and games from our partner ecosystems. So Shrapnel, for instance, will be airdropping. Wilder World, YGG, The Sandbox, Explo, which is a come to us chain, largest mobile game developer in the world. Marble X, which is Netmarble, third largest game publisher in the world. Engines of Fury, a brand new title that we're very excited about. And there will be a few more special collaborations that we'll announce over the course of the next few months. But as you can tell, these tokens are live and it's immediately discernible as to what their value is. So we definitely wanted to give them the ability to do user acquisition. We also wanted to reward our early community and the stakers that are already staking on Saga after a couple of weeks of mainnet being live. So that is going to be a huge campaign to pull off. But we also announced at GDC this year our publishing house. So we are the only layer one to do a full-on game publisher. It's called Saga Origins. And these are titles that we fully back financially in terms of go-to-market resources. We stay with this team and really bring the game to market. And we have a very distinctive creative point of view there. So it is games that are, as we say, provocative, expansive, uncompromising. So these are the mature titles. And we think that it's about time that we had more mature content in Web3 gaming. So Web3 gaming, I think, has had a lightheartedness to it. And then some things have started to veer in that mature direction, especially with respect to first-person shooter games. But having said that, we think that Web3 exists to push the envelope. And so we are going to put content that is incredibly high quality and incredibly great experiences for the gamers, but nevertheless will make them think and feel in pretty intense ways. So bringing those games to market, I think, is going to be a huge effort for us. And as you can probably tell, we focus a lot on the user numbers here at Saga. So in order to be competitive with wider gaming, to really have Web3 gaming, quote unquote, make it in traditional gaming, we need to have comparable numbers. And that means at least 1 million MAUs. So for our flagship titles, I think that's our goal for this year.
Wow, that's awesome. It's great to hear that you have a publishing house and you're really trying to get the games, the game. I feel like the gameplay, the game experience comes first. And of course, adding in the blockchain is extra
100%.
value. So I'm glad that there's a focus on that. And that over 9,000 airdrop campaign sounds really cool as well for the stakers. I'm going to check that out personally. I can leave the links to the publishing house, the airdrop campaign, and just the Saga platform and the social links, everything in the show notes below. Rebecca, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm so excited. You have me excited for the gaming industry. As you said, it's like you have to wait a long time for great games to come, and sometimes you get impatient. But you've reignited the flame of like, yeah, this is going to be amazing when all of this is said and done and blockchain is integrated in. There's going to be so much extra value for the gamers and for the publishers as well. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Ashton. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.